Well, if the federal government is dedicating any amount of money for feeding children, that's good, or that's fine, and that is a sort of a commendable act from the government. However, I don't know how that will encourage children to get into education. And if I have more sort of details on this, or if I've read more on that, I will understand the strategy of how that will work. Telling children or asking children to come and get some food and also get an education is a very carefully worked out program and strategy that we look at feeding hunger and also providing education and knowledge. And that has to be very much considered in such sort of initiative and such sort of program. So when we know the strategy and find out if it can work, is it relevant? Can it work? Or is this just another, I don't know, there's been quite a lot of just gestures that are not really practical and cannot really work. So we really need to go back, we really need to go to the drawing board and say, how is this practical? What is the education strategy that we're going to be giving to these children? And how are we going to get them to come to understand or try to give them some sort of education and also feed them as well? So these are two different things that have to come together and has to be rolled out very cleverly and very strategically. Okay, yes, I've seen quite a lot of disturbing videos and films on horrible classrooms. I wonder if we can actually call those schools or just places where peoples are gathered and children are gathered and are given some sort of learning strategy that perhaps we cannot really call education. We have to go back and find out what is education and what is just teaching them 1, 2, 3 and ABC. Now, these dilapidated places and these places that you bring children in, and mostly you will see that these children are from families that are either below the poverty line or at the poverty line. So they come to school trying to get some form of education, and that is the only place, that is the only option they have. Now, if they are getting quality education, it's to be questioned. But the fact that there is a need for education is something of a need for learning is something that, you know, we have to look at and say that if there's a need to have this sort of learning, what do we do about it? And it is not a question of, oh, this is better to do or that is better to do. It's how do we correlate these two initiatives? How do we sort out the dilapidated schools and all that sort of stuff with terrible atmosphere and terrible classrooms and all that? And how do we actually feed children who, without being fed, will never have time to concentrate on any form of education? Now, has to be a carefully led program and initiative. And it has to be in the open. It's not just going to be clandestine, which means that it's not going to be by some people sitting down in some office and deciding. We have to actually go out practically, speak to parents, look at the place, a lot of educational officers, a lot of educational practitioners, you know, a lot of educational school owners, a lot of education. I try to keep away from, you know, the educational ministry and the government, but a lot of education people will have to go out and actually look at it. How is this practical? And how can this work? So then it's a case of, do we actually need anywhere that we can throw together and call a school with terrible roofs and terrible chairs and terrible everything? Is this really a school? And will children actually want to come there and say that what we have to survive, we have to eat. What are we going to do sitting down for 3 to 5 hours listening to some abstract understanding about, you know, something that we really don't understand about. While we are here to survive, we have to get a meal in our body today. Well, if the government says that, well, I really, try to keep away from government policy and commentary because I don't know so much about it, and I've not read a lot of that. So I cannot really speak in detail about all that. But what I can say is that if there is a program out that you actually want to provide, or there's the constitution that says that has to provide this for the children, how is that practically rolled out? And one of the practical areas of that is to see how we provide, or see how the country or the educational practitioners provide food. Because one of the reasons why children are not actually coming in to the schools is because they are hungry, or they do not see it as relevant, because they have to walk out there, and child labor, which we all know is illegal, they have to walk out there in order to feed, and it's sometimes to feed their parents, or sometimes to all the family come together in order to get 1 square meal a day, never mind 3 square meals a day. So it is a question of how do we work that out. So there's a good initiative working there, and this will help enrollment, but how do we actually practically create that? Again, I say I cannot comment on government. I'm really concentrating on education. I don't know, what the government, and all the details of the government policy and all that. However, when we look at, as you say, nutrition, can 100 naira actually provide nutrition? We have to speak to people who can go out there and ask themselves that, is getting staple food for 100 naira? I don't know if it's the gari and ekpa or akara on ogi. Is that staple nutritious food? I don't know. We'll have to ask the food nutritionist. And can 100 naira actually provide that? Instead of thinking that we all have to have more sort of expensive food out there. Is that nutrition enough? Is that enough? And can 100 naira provide that? Those are the questions that we have to speak to, and we have to have the public to come in, and we have this conversation. It is that feeling for knowledge that we have to address. It is that sort of hunger for knowledge that we have to address. And that can be done on an empty stomach. So as I said, government is doing this, government, I don't know anything about government. I am not a politician. I consult on education, and looking at that education and saying that, is it going to work when you ask someone that come and gain some form of knowledge? And we have to be very clear that knowledge is not just about reading so many books and the abstract and saying that we're going to go through all that, get to primary school and do all that, and get to be in primary school, go to secondary school, then go to university and all that. That is another big confusion that we have to clean out. There are a lot of people that are incredibly knowledgeable and educated in the vocational, in the practical. So the people we look at as layman, or as you define as layman, the bricklayers, the mechanics, and all those people that you call the laymen, which we call the working people of the world and or the country, they can fix a car and you can't fix a car as good as they can. Strategic planning. We're not going to get anywhere if we do not plan this. And what I've noticed quite a lot is that there is always a need for a quick fix with millions of naira or dollars or whatever attached to it. That doesn't work. It is good to have that financial support, of course, but how do you plan that out? And your strategic planning and your future planning has to take months, years, then has to be rolled out practically. Not just in the abstract and in the theory. Oh, we are giving this, we are doing that, we are doing that, we are doing that. And it doesn't actually get to the people that it says it wants to serve. It is just another series of words that you spoke about the layman. When the layman actually sees that and feels it, and we, the so-called middle-class people and the people who are on TV and all that, actually see that working, you have to have strategic planning. And sometimes this can take strategic planning, this can take years to actually plan this, how to roll it out so that it actually works. And I think the people of, a lot of people have not actually seen that. And when that is seen, and we use the media like yourself to actually put that into your TV, the radio, all sort of media channels, the social handles, and say that this is how it is working. We're not promising that, it's all going to happen like that. What we're saying is that this is a beginning. This is the money that the government and other private institutions and other industries have actually bought into. Because the government, what about multi-million industries? What about multi-dollar, multi-billion industries that are working in Nigeria that could give to education? 1%, 2%, 3% to education. And you have trustworthy people there who would roll this out. Now, this is possible. It is not impossible. It is not abstract. This is the amount of money that we need from all industries, because it even helps the industry, because you are now creating the future that will work for you in the industry and for the country of which you need industrious people to work in and indigenous nationals. So, asking them that if you make 6 billion a year, give 600 million or 6 million to the program, and people are trusted to actually roll that out, and the people see that it's working. The layman, as you speak, will say, oh yes, that is working. Education actually works. But right now, it doesn't seem so. Because if you are in the layman's, you will say, what am I doing, wasting my time for 5 hours, when for 1 hour I can make 100 naira by doing other things out there on the streets? Why am I going to be sitting down, listening to all this abstract stuff?